Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. I just want to invite the Holy Spirit into this conversation so that we can have a beautiful conversation about creativity. And in that, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Beautiful. So, I would like to know, when you're in your studio, what are you working on right now?
Right now, I just got back from a trip to Mexico. And I just got back on last Saturday night, so I've been back for a week.
Wow.
And I had one commission to complete. It was a portrait of somebody's grandchildren. And then just processing the images and pictures that I took from the trip. And then I finally, yesterday, my client came to pick up her portrait, and so in order to get prepared for her to come, I had cleaned my studio, and it forces me, to get organized so, I don't look like a crazy slob. It's kind of a challenge when, your studio is in your home because you have life at home, and then a client comes and you don't want to, have it be all chaotic.
Yeah, so, presentation is important.
Yeah, so I had to get myself organized and get ready for her, and then she came and she was really happy with her portrait, and we had a great conversation, and then she took off, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm done with that. So now I can do what I want to do and do some of my own stuff, and it's like a treat, because I feel like, when you're trying to do art as like your actual business, you spend a lot of time on marketing and website and all that stuff. And sometimes I feel like just being creative and getting to do what I want to do gets put on the back burner. So I took a couple hours and I completed a painting, and it's already up on my website, and yeah, I'm really excited about it. So.
And was that a painting that was inspired by the trip to Mexico?
Yes, it was. And there's a pretty good story behind it. And I wanted to do it while it was still fresh in my mind. And I'm still missing the beach. Like we had ended up getting a great room. And my friend is a travel agent, and she has helped me in the past with my art shows, and she went to Chicago with me for my first ever big art show in Grant Park. And so like when she went with me, she helped me like sell my work and all that kind of stuff, and set up and tear down, and we ended up staying at a really nice place when she came with me, but I had to tell her and my other couple friends, can you help me pay for the room? Because I didn't have enough money to pay for, I would love to, but I'm, just starting out with this. So they all were happy to help, and she was one of them. So then I felt like, then she just called me like a couple weeks ago and said, hey, you want to go to Mexico with me? But you have to pay for your part of the room. But it was good because I had already done the same thing to her. So she felt comfortable asking me, the same thing. We're both solo entrepreneurs, so we kind of try to help each other out. So Indeed. there doing site inspections for several resorts in Cancun and Riviera Maya, and I was basically her camera crew and helped
Nice.
her take notes and pictures so that she can remember, what to tell her clients and stuff.
That's
So
awesome. So
yeah.
when you didn't paint while you were in Mexico. You're getting ready to paint
Well,
now.
I did paint a little bit. Like,
Okay.
I wish I had had more time to do it, but it was kind of more of a working trip to support um, my friend. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did, but the cool thing is that we ended up getting at our first hotel that we stayed at a free upgrade to this
Oh.
gorgeous room that was like 100 yards from the water, and it was a corner balcony suite. So it was just amazing. And the
Mm.
painting I did is from that
Is that the
location.
after the storm painting, or is
Yes,
it okay?
yes, that's the one I did. I did that one in studio just yesterday. And then
Gotcha.
my other paintings I did on location they were more just kind of, I don't getting used to painting on location and getting over the hurdle of, can I do this? How do I transport my paint? And that it was a whole new level for me. I mean,
And then how big are your paintings, the ones that you do for yourself?
the original one that I just did, I do a really small painting and then
Mm-hmm.
I photograph it and then manipulate it digitally in Photoshop so that it can be enlarged to bigger
Okay.
sizes.
Okay. And then okay, I got what you're saying. So the original then is a small painting, but
Right.
then the prints that you sell prints, correct?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. And we'll talk about that through Art Store later. I love these guys. And man, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should have them sponsor the show. No.
Hmm.
Well, that's not a bad idea.
That is a good idea.
Because I love everything about them. Everything about them.
Yeah, I do too.
The tool is awesome, but the people behind it they're so committed. But
Yes.
back to you. Um, yeah. So then what you're planning on doing then is getting set up to go through the photos that you had from Mexico
Yeah.
and uh, and then produce a body of work from that.
Yeah, I think so. And I do, I've been wanting to do more seascapes and
Mm-hmm.
just practice more with doing the waves and the water and the foam when they crash on the shoreline. And I've always loved doing I don't know if you call it a skyscape,
Sure.
but I love doing skies. And this is just another form of what I've been doing for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now. So,
Nice. Yeah, skies are interesting. I was at a art critique last night at the local art museum. They do it once a month, and uh, one of the ladies brought in a painting, and she did the sky, and they were talking about how difficult it is, uh, and so yeah, I would think you could do a lot of skyscapes, become a master skyscaper. Say that
well,
10 times fast.
yeah, I mean, I guess I just always have loved doing skies because I'm always fascinated by them. And there's just something spiritual about seeing that every day and how it's always changing. And,
Mm,
if you're ever like feeling down, just look
mhm.
up and it's hard to be.
Down.
Yeah. It's hard to be as disappointed as you were before you looked up. Just look up is my motto.
That's awesome. Love it. I love it. Um, so let me ask you, this is where you are right now. Where did you come from? Like, what's your art journey?
Well, I'm 43. and I've been drawing and making stuff my entire life. I mean, ever since I was old enough to hold a pencil. My mom would sit, my brothers also, even though he doesn't really use his art skills as much anymore in the same way that I do, but my brother is a really awesome artist, but he's a veterinarian by profession, so he doesn't do that as much anymore. But we started out around the dining room table with crayons and stuff, and I just kind of followed along, and I enjoyed it too. And I I I don't have a ton of formal training with it. It's more just by experience, and um, all the classes I could take, I took in high school, art classes. I tried to take some in college, but I just I did not enjoy them. They took the fun out of it, or something. There was something about it that it just was too intimidating for me or something. So, and I mean, I think I probably should have gone to school for art, but the next best thing for me, I felt like horticulture.
Interesting.
So I I went into that because I felt like, well, that's a more practical job, and I know I'll always be able to find a job in it somewhere. And it's kind of like painting, but with flowers and plants. So I went into that and got a degree there from Iowa State University and met my husband, and I tried to take a few classes as electives in art, and
Mm-hmm.
I ended up dropping them because I hated it. So um, then I kind of, after graduating, I was a horticulturist at Chicago Botanic Garden. And from there, just working with other artists and designers, it kind of really just that background, and through the internships I did with horticulture. I also did an internship in Pennsylvania at Longwood Gardens
Oh,
in the
yeah, yeah.
conservatories. You're from
Mhm.
Pennsylvania, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So are you familiar with Longwood Gardens?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I did an internship there, and just all those experiences, they all kind of keep adding up to my background in just studying shapes and forms and color, and which colors go well with others and how they echo each other in a landscape. And I took landscape design classes there, and they kind of help you think about focal points and positioning and composition, just using live plants instead
Mm-hmm.
and objects. So I feel like all of that has helped me get to where I am. Um, but let's see. So I didn't really start painting until probably sometime after my second son was born. So he was born, he's 9 years old, almost 10. So
Mm-hmm.
I probably started really painting again, like really started painting after when he was like 1 or 2, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I did take an oil painting class while I was working at Chicago Botanic Garden to relieve stress. Believe it or not, working in a public garden, is really stressful. So, and then
It's
I just kind of kept going, and I don't know, like things just kept snowballing and kept making more and more art. And then it's like, I need to do something with this. And people started, I think other people, friends, and people started believing in me that I could actually do something with this before I did. So
That's beautiful. So you mainly work in oils, or are you doing acrylics, or like what's your medium that you're working in now?
I do. I'm very multidisciplinary. I like to experiment a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as painting goes, my medium of choice would be oils.
Okay.
And when I can't do oils, like this on this trip to Mexico, I brought my oil pastels or
Mm-hmm.
soft pastels, and I was able to complete a painting, a seascape, on the flight back to the States on the plane in my tiny little seat. So
Really?
yeah, that's one of my things. I like the challenge of seeing all the different places I can paint while I'm moving.
Well, I feel you on that. I actually did a drill with students last week where I had them draw lines and then I bumped the table, right,
Uh-huh.
to show them that they're not going to screw up. And then when they realized that, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is cool!" But it was inspired because when I was probably about their age, I used to take the bus home. About 12,
Oh,
13, 14 years old, right?
yeah.
And and I would challenge myself to draw straight lines on a bus, right? So
Oh,
when you hit the potholes and you're going all over the place, but your body kind of it's able to absorb these things and you're able to stay in control. And I
mm-hmm.
remember the kids coming around like, "How can you do that? How can you draw straight lines?" I'm like, "I'm magical." No, um, but there is something cool about like trying to figure out like where you can draw. I've never thought about it in terms of painting. Um,
Oh, I've done oil paintings in the van in I call it my mobile art studio,
it's
and my
awesome.
family calls it the Silver Bullet. We
The
have an
silver
old
bullet.
van that we drove it out to Montana this summer,
Oh,
and
that's what you meant by when your husband was driving, you were painting.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, tell us
And
that story.
that all started like years ago. Like my husband his family lives like 4.5 hours away from where we live now. And
That's
I
why you
would
guys are
always
so happy.
he hates driving or hates being the passenger.
Okay.
So, because he gets car sick, but I can pretty much, as long as it's not windy and the road's not too windy, which in Iowa, it's pretty easy to have a straight road. um,
Nice.
so like I've done, it kind of became a challenge to me, like, what could I do this time in the van on the trip there? And so I started out with, I would do, crocheting. Just, I need to keep my hands moving. And then another time I was into polymer clay and I would sculpt polymer clay while I was sitting in the passenger seat. And then another time I've even made wreaths in the van out of
What?
ribbon and things like that in the dark. So then I'd bring my watercolor paints in the van to see if I could do it. And I've sold some of my work that I've made in the van. People seem to really like the spontaneity of it. I don't know what
That's
it is
cool.
about it, but yeah, I did a purple cone flower just in like a sepia tone on this newsprint sketch paper in watercolor, and
Hmm.
it was just really loose, and that was one of the first things I sold at one of my first art shows. So
Nice.
it's kind of cool that you don't have to, you don't always have to work so hard at being so precise. It's more about the feeling you put into it, maybe. I don't know. I'm still learning. But yeah, so I start out with the watercolor in the car as far as painting goes. And then I've tried acrylic inks in the car, and I've done dog sketches in the car or in the van. I should say the mobile art studio. That sounds way more sophisticated.
Yeah. Are you sitting in the passenger seat, or do you got like a little section in the van where you have like a little studio set up?
No, I'm sitting in the passenger seat and I have a little crate of all my supplies on the floor. And like if it was watercolors, I would have a little cup of water in the cup holder. And then I would use those brushes they have like a water reservoir in the brush.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But then I decided I'm going to try oil painting. And I did that over the summer because we had, 18 to 30 hours. I can't remember how many hours it was in the car from Montana to here. It was like 2 or 3 days worth of driving. So I had plenty of time to
Wow.
experiment.
Wow.
So yeah, that became that's where I discovered a new kind of more abstract technique where you you get this, you take paint and you don't even mix it or do anything. You just tap the tube of paint onto the canvas
Mm.
and the colors kind of begin to mix themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more of an abstract type painting, and
Mm-hmm.
you're basically you're feeling your surroundings and you're just absorbing all the colors, and everything is whizzing by you at like 80 miles an hour. But and you're listening to the music, and sometimes I've caught myself like it's kind of like pointillism straight out of the tube of
Mm-hmm.
the oil paint of the paint. And I've caught myself actually like tapping the canvas to the beat of the music,
No, of
and
course.
it ends up creating a whole new energy with the painting. And
Indeed.
I really I really enjoy it. It's a really stress-free way to paint, and it's you come up with some amazing combinations of color that way.
Yeah. It, I love that because I do that as well. Like when I'm listening to music,
Mhm.
especially if I'm sketching.
Mhm.
Um, I was just doing that recently with these flamingo. Um, I composed this flamingo image, and I had the flamingo dancing and the music going on. And
Uh-huh.
so when you're hearing that, and it's just that 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 beat with the guitar and the singing, that just that, and
Yeah.
you capture that in that energy in the mark making when you're
Yes.
tapping. What's nice is because you're getting this little rhythm, you're actually
Mhm.
adding this math to the picture, right? There's this sequence, this pattern that's going on, this rhythm. And then when we see it, we're actually getting that same sensation. Though the music we're hearing it, but the painting we're actually seeing it. And so we'll see, like in your case, not only just the colors, but when you tap it, it's creating that texture, and
Mhm.
it's you're repeating that texture. And so as the eye goes up and down as it goes through that, if the light's on, it's going to show, it's going to have little shadows to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's I like that. That's very cool. That's very
It's a
cool.
really cool way to be spontaneous. And for me, it's really important to have an outlet like that because I do pet portraiture too. And those are like, the opposite of spontaneous. So I, I have to have an outlet where I can just put whatever I want on the canvas and not think. I need to like do more, be more. I'm sure I'm thinking in some ways, but it's more of an intuitive
Yeah.
way to paint, and it's a way to really be present in your surroundings. So,
Well, I always say it's painting with your mind and painting with your body, right? So I have
yeah.
two children. My daughter's very, very head oriented. My son, very opposite. He's very body oriented, right? He thinks through action.
Mhm.
And my daughter has to think again, overanalyze, be precise, and then act, right?
That's how
But
I
my
usually am.
Oh, okay. So that's why you need this balance, right? This
Yes.
place where you can just like not think and just ah!
Yes, just spit it out.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. I'll tell you, I was watching that video of you painting the dogs, the two little, I don't even know what kind of dogs they are, under your custom uh, dog portrait
Oh, was it a
page.
time lapse or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Okay.
And and I really enjoyed your knife work. You were painting with the palette knife.
Yeah.
And actually, it's interesting. A lot of your paintings, the ones that I'm attracted to the most to, I believe there's like a texture to them. So I'm assuming that you're using a palette knife to paint with, correct?
Well, do you remember which one you're referring to? Is there, and I
Well,
could tell you.
well, the dog one I really, really liked. That you painted. That was a commission one, and I believe you're doing that. But on your homepage, there's two paintings. There's the one that's with the purple. It's called Firework, right?
Oh,
And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and then there's this one that you're holding, the Iowa. I'm assuming that's actually what you were doing with the open tube, correct? Iowa in August.
Oh, okay. That one, no, Iowa in August.
Is that your hand?
Wait, is it Sunrise Over the Pasture? No, I'm
No,
trying
it's
to.
right there. It's like the middle one on your homepage. Oh, maybe it's not your homepage. Original paintings. Go under your
Oh,
original.
okay. Original paintings. Oh, yeah, that one. There's a good story behind that one.
Which one?
The Iowa in August one. That one
First,
is.
you have to answer this question. Is that your hand, or did you superimpose that onto there?
No, that's my hand.
What? You got like the perfect nails.
I know, and I use them for my paintings too.
You can be like a hand model. That's your new career.
That's what, do you think there's actually like a market for that? Because
Yes.
I need some
Go to
extra
QVC.
income here.
They hold things up. Honestly,
How do I
believe
get
they're
into
it.
How do I get into that market? Because that would help
Honestly,
pay
just
some
go to
bills.
Google, type in hand model, right? And there's probably agents out there who will find you work. I'm serious.
I've been told that so many times that you should be a hand model. You have the prettiest hands, but I never. Did you ever watch Seinfeld?
Oh yes, the lady with the man hands.
No, there was a whole episode where they wanted George Costanza to be a hand model.
Oh, that's right.
Do you remember that one?
I think so. I don't know. I don't really know, to be honest.
Well,
I remember there was one about hands.
You're probably the man hands one.
I think so.
But there's another one where where George was discovered by somebody who thought he had amazing hands, and then he got so worried about it, he would wear mitts everywhere he went to protect his hands, and I could totally see that happening to me. And then he jinxed himself and ended up, I don't know what happened, if he broke his hand or did something, and then he lost the gig.
Aye.
So,
Well,
but yeah, that is my hand, and that painting is.
You could get paid by other artists just to hold up their artwork.
I'm game. I would totally do that.
Actually, you know what? That's not a bad idea. Like if you took a whole bunch of pictures like that with different canvases,
Yeah.
right? But blank ones, and then people can take a photo of their work and superimpose it onto there. Go talk to Art Store, right? Like they'll buy those images from you.
Oh, that would be awesome. I could use another silo of income because, I'm an emerging artist here, so I'm still scraping.
Totally gotcha. So tell me about the story behind this Iowa in August painting.
Well, this is another one I did in the mobile art studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I completed it in less than a half an hour. And we were just driving to my niece's birthday party, who lives about 25 minutes away from where I live. And my hometown is where I grew up is called Bluegrass. And so we were on our way to Bluegrass for the birthday party. And it was right around 5 o'clock. So it's that hour of the day where the sun is low in the sky. And it's just the greens in Iowa at that time of year. There's all these golds and different shades of green, and the sky is so beautiful. We have so much sky to look at. It's like a 360-degree view of the sky, which to me is priceless. But so I just started tapping the canvas, and I had my paints there, and I happened to still have my paints and my canvases in there from our road trip that we went to Montana. And I was really, really doing really well. And then my husband was driving, and I was almost finished with the painting, and we were just rolling into the neighborhood where my niece lives. And my husband was being kind of a smarty pants. I would say another word, but I think my son is up now. And he was purposely swerving around to try to like see, like he's like, let's make it a little more abstract and make it a little more interesting. So he would like jerk the steering wheel. But I kept my lines my gradients fairly horizontal. So yeah, and that ended up being one of my favorite paintings. Just the way the colors mixed, I was just so happy with it, and I love the texture. So.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of texture, but when I saw your work, I was like, "Oh, those are cool." You know,
I'm
I can
usually
see them in
not
a nice
either.
frame.
Yeah. And usually, I mean, I've tried, like last winter, I was like, all right, I'm going to try doing, what is it, impasto. And
Yeah. Without being an imposter.
I hated it. I like end up using way too much paint, and it turned into mud, and I ended up scraping the whole thing off and basically starting over. And I said, never again.
Until I get in the car.
And then I discovered this whole technique, because I think the thing I didn't like about the impasto technique with the palette knife, using tons and tons of paint, is that it ends up getting everywhere. And I am like a sensory person, as far as I don't like to get my hands into gooey stuff. So
I feel you.
Like my son, I have 2 boys, and they're always into that slime stuff that's been really popular, and the goo and all those, and I am like, nope, I'm not touching it. I don't like it. Get it away from me. So this was kind of a happy medium, being able to, I don't have to touch the paint. I just like tap the canvas, and it comes out on its own, and I get these beautiful results. So yeah.
Here's a crazy question. I'm trying to figure out your pricing. I'm like scrolling through your website, and I'm like looking at stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's that price. This one is like 600 times more than that price.
I'm still learning all of that.
And then like I see one that I'm like, oh my God, that would you could probably get it pretty plenty. And then like you look at it, and it's like the cheapest one on there. And I'm like, it's kind of like throwing me a little bit.
Well,
So what are you doing to create your product? Like why like, if you don't mind me talking about this, like what's the thinking behind your pricing?
Well, I guess the mindset I have started with is because I've always been paid by the hour. Like as a horticulturist, when you're doing physical work, you're paid by the hour. And I know I need to change my mindset on that. And like
in creativity, you can't get paid by the hour.
Right. So
you get paid by the solution. Yes.
So I struggle with that. And so some of these, I'm like, well, it's just a little painting, and it only took me, half an hour to create. So like that, the one that I really love with my beautiful hand in the picture, I put 85, and I thought that was high. And then there's like this other big one that's
Did you sell it yet?
No.
Okay.
And then there's this other one that's called Crabapple Blossoms.
Yes.
That one is like a 36 by 36. So I'm like, okay, it's way bigger. So I kind of judge on size. And then I spent like 2 weeks working on that or more, just getting the colors right. And so again, it's like a time thing. But honestly, like my favorite ones are the looser ones that are.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, there's one that's 24 by 24 that's like $400. The crab apple is $1,200, and it's only 36 by 36, right?
Yeah.
So it's bigger, but not really that much bigger.
Yeah.
But the price is like 3 times more. Now, I don't know how many hours you put into it. Personally, that's irrelevant, right? To the person who's buying it. They're just looking at the image.
Yeah.
So when I look at the image that you painted, it's a $1,200 image, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the other one at $400, kind of, that looks like a fair price for that image, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I find it interesting as you just scroll through, you have like these different styles, and some look super advanced, like your floral work.
Mm-hmm.
Very advanced. Like it looks like you approached a canvas with connected to this incredible body of knowledge, right? And it's almost like what you're producing is coming from a place of understanding and confidence and clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other work feels more fun and more explorative. You know, like you're kind
Mm-hmm.
of trying to figure something out or trying to see if there's something in there. You
Mm-hmm.
know. And so that's very, very interesting. And so you might consider saying, "Hey, this is the stuff I'm currently trying to figure out. It's at this price, but the stuff that I'm confident and connected to is at this price." And so there's a price difference,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not about the size or the amount of time. It's about the connection that you have that's coming out of you and what you're producing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Do you think I should change my pricing, like
I
raise or
heard
lower?
well, see, the problem is this. Once you start seeing this roller coaster of pricing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then the human who looks at it begins to wonder. You're forcing them to compare and contrast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that, they start asking questions. And there is nothing here to give them the answers to those questions. So they're like, why is that price? And that one's like all the way up there, and this one's over here, and that one's down there. You know, you might just say, if it is a painting, it's $1,200. If it is a drawing, it's $400. If it's a small piece, you know, it's $100. Like, and so therefore they're like, oh, okay. If I want a big piece, I'm paying this. If I want this, I'm paying that. Like, it becomes much easier for them to understand what those prices are.
Yeah.
But when you see 3 paintings across and it is up and down, and there's no clear reason why.
So like if I called it like, okay, the abstract one that has my hand in it,
mm-hmm.
That one I consider more of like a study because I did it so quickly, or I could call it an intuitive study or something.
I'm going to ask you never ever to tell anybody that you did it quickly.
Okay.
This is the reason why. I'll tell you a story. There's a husband and wife, their furnace breaks, right? They're cold. So they call the furnace guy to come fix it, right? Now, the husband thought he could fix it. He went down there for, 2 hours trying to figure it out, And so the guy comes, the professional comes, and he comes downstairs and he looks at it and he pulls out his hammer and he goes, bam, right? And the furnace goes, boom, and starts up again, right? And so he hands him a bill for $150, right? And the guy's like, what? You just came in here like less than a minute and hit it with a hammer, and now you're charging me $150. He's like, yeah, well, I'm not charging you $150 for coming here and hitting it. I'm charging you $150 for knowing where to hit it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that guy didn't know. This guy had 40 years experience. So the more experience you have, the faster something should kind of take you, right?
True.
So you don't want to trade time for money. That's not the game you're playing here, right? So we're not selling our time to people. We're selling a vision and experience to people and an emotional connection. Um, when I was in Portugal, I saw this painting, and something I deeply, deeply love about my son is that he loves gratitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I bought, it was actually one of the first pieces of art from another artist that I ever bought. And it was this cool layout that this artist did. And it, in Portuguese, it said gratitude. And I was like, oh my God, I got to get it for my son and put it in his room, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't care what the price was. I didn't care if he took 50 weeks or 50 seconds, right? I had this emotional connection to it. And he created something that resonated. It was in the same frequency that honored my son, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was paying for, was that connection from my boy. Say, man, look what I got you from Portugal. It's you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in a strange way, the artist, especially when you're out there marketing, the art in a weird way, it has nothing to do with you or the time you put into it. It's if you're really trying to sell it, it has to do with the person that you're selling it to. And so you got to know who you're selling to, right? And then how to connect that story to them. It happens in real estate. I have a lot of people in my family in real estate, and so when you buy a house, you start fixing it up. The
Yeah.
problem is sometimes you fix it up at an expense that you'll never get back out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have to make that choice. Am I fixing it up at this level of expense because it gives me tremendous amounts of pleasure? So when you go to sell the house, you're like, well, I use these special nails and I use it. And the real estate agent's like, that no one's gonna buy it because you use special nails.
Right.
Right. So
Unless if you find a client that really loves special nails.
and the reality
really
is you won't.
A special nail, which is really unlikely.
Yeah, the day before you die, the person's like, I love those nails. Oh, thanks. So, it's like, yeah, and so we get attached so much into certain things and the romance of certain things. But when somebody buys, they're buying for their own romance, not yours, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm only having this conversation with you because I know marketing is important for you. I think you actually, like, watching your videos, your time lapse, like, I'm like, dang, like you're serious about this, and you can tell. Like, I think one of your arts is the way that you market yourself.
Well, thank you.
I mean, the discipline, the time you put into it, the environment, the ecosystem that you've created, the investments that you're making, right? And
Mm-hmm.
all of that has nothing to do with your artwork. All you're doing is creating a vehicle, a distribution, a store, if you will, a shop,
Mm-hmm.
these systems, so that you have the ability to connect with other people and give them ways to own your work. So I commend you on that, because so many artists want to do it, but they lack the discipline or the knowledge, or sometimes the courage to go out and do it, things like that.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest. I mean, if you had seen me a couple years ago, you would be amazed at how far I've come as far as in the confidence department in putting myself out there. Like, I pretty much feel like I do almost everything afraid.
Mm.
And it's not that I'm never afraid. I'm always like nervous about doing things. Like even this podcast, I was really apprehensive this morning, and I was like praying, like, okay, God, help me just get out of bed so I can do this, because it sounds funny, but it's like performance anxiety.
Sure. Yeah. Well,
So,
also they say the two things that people are afraid of the most is death and public speaking. And in a weird way,
yeah.
This is why I don't do the podcast live, right? So it's
Yeah.
not quote unquote public speaking. It's just a conversation between two great people. And then it goes
this
public,
is
right?
much less intimidating. Much
Yeah,
less intimidating than a live interview. But
yeah, because
I mean, a few years ago, like I started out with the dog portraits because I was, wanting to really start taking this painting thing seriously, but I was struggling with subject matter.
Mhm.
And my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, Debbie, sent me this text message with a picture of her French bulldog, and his name is Jerry. And my
Jerry.
husband and I we love Seinfeld, and so we're always saying, "Oh, Jerry," like whenever we're talking about her dog. And anyway, she sent me it was hilarious and cute and great all at the same time, but it was a picture of Jerry in a tuxedo with a little party hat on for New Year's.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I'm just going to try to paint Jerry. Who cares what I'm painting? I just need to paint something. Sometimes you just need to get it out of your system. I don't know how you are, but I've even made pop art that says, like, it's like on mugs and coasters and things. Painting is like pooping. You always feel better when you're done.
That's one of the lessons that I teach when I teach breathing. I'm like, when you're painting or drawing, you got to control your breath because you're actually literally pushing this thing, which is this energy.
You're birthing it.
You're birthing it, exactly. And I was going to use the birthing analogy, but I was talking to a bunch of, 15-year-old, 14-year-old kids that couldn't relate to that.
Yeah.
But everybody can relate to pooping.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so, you got to control your breathing because if you don't, it don't come out sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just needed to get something onto a canvas for some practice,
Yeah.
And it ended up being one of my favorite paintings, like as far as dog portraits go. And I was so excited about it. I posted it on social media and everybody went nuts over it. And then I got my first commission for a pet portrait, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And it's not like I want to pigeonhole myself into being only a dog portrait artist or a pet portrait artist, but
Sure,
that's one of the staples of my income. But that's one thing I struggle with, though, is like, I don't want to be stuck in any one genre. I want to be kind of like a musician. Musicians have albums. This is how I've like justified all this to myself over the years. I have to make analogies. A lot of times it's with gardening, but as far as like when I first was applying to my first art shows, it was horrible because they say, well, you need a cohesive body of work. And it's just so intimidating. And like, I had lots of
let me
work,
ask you this.
Nothing that went together.
As a gardener, are there plants or crops that you should never put in the same garden?
Yes.
Give me an example.
Well, like you never want to plant, for some reason, you're not supposed to plant tomatoes where there's a walnut tree because there's chemicals that the walnut tree produces in the soil that make it unsuitable for tomatoes.
Really?
Yeah. And
That's
then
interesting.
You're never supposed to plant tomatoes in the same place 2 years in a row. You're supposed to rotate your crops. Same with squash.
Okay. Interesting.
So, yeah.
So maybe that is the wisdom that you need to tap into, right? So let's say you have 7 days a week. Maybe you put 3 days a week where you do dog portraits, right? Income producing commissioned work. And then you have 2 or 3 days where you do not even look at the dog, you flip all your canvases around, and that's where you're focusing on your other crop. right?
Mhm.
Which is that expressive, just whatever it is, right? Whatever you're exploring at that time. And
Mhm.
you just keep them in different gardens.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I mean, I follow another artist. Her name's Meg Knappenberger. I think that's how you
Mm-hmm.
say her name. And she's also on art storefronts. That's kind of how I
Okay,
discovered
gotcha.
her and kind of came to become a client of art storefronts. And she talks about that. They art storefronts has this thing where they have mentor videos or whatever, and she's one of the mentor people.
Mm,
And she talks about, and I've heard this in other areas, from other artists too. It's okay. Don't feel like you have to be. This is quoted from her. What I just watched a video. You don't have to feel like you have to be pigeonholed into like one specific, type
yeah.
of artwork. Just consider each genre as like a silo, and you put all of your dog portraits in that silo, and that's one form of income. And then you put
Mm-hmm.
all your abstract work into another silo. And so I'm developing silos and filling them, and eventually I'll
But
have.
and Michelangelo suffered with that, right? He had silos. He had a silo of sculpture, right? But he also was an architect and a painter.
Yeah.
And so the way he paid the bills was through painting. What
Mm-hmm.
he loved to do was sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is you start filling up this one silo, which consumes all your time. And it
Mm-hmm.
was very frustrating for him because he had very little time to do what really fulfilled him and he loved to do, which was a sculpture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he had to struggle with this. And so, um, is there a way where you can have some discipline where you're not spending 95% of your time doing stuff that that's fun and you like it, but that's paying the bills, but you're not giving yourself enough time, enough space for that other, you know, being in that other space. And does that make sense?
Yeah, I just haven't figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
It's so hard, like, because it's not just, balancing all the different facets of what I do artistically. There's also marketing
Yep.
and newsletters and family. Like, I feel like a lot of times that this becomes so consuming that I'm a stay-at-home mom first. I'm here. I love having my studio at home because I
Yep.
can be here when my kids leave for school, and I can be here when they come home. And it's not like we spend every waking moment together, but I
Hmm.
think it's good for them to just have an environment that they know they're safe and they can come home to and just chill.
Yeah.
I mean, even like while
How
I
old
was
are
in
your kids?
Mexico, well, the oldest is 14, so he's getting much more self-sufficient, but I feel like now is one of the most important times for me to be around. And my youngest is 9.
Okay.
So, but
So
even
they're
while I
actually
was
both old
gone,
enough.
yes, yeah,
Okay,
they
go on. What were
are.
you gonna say?
But even like when I was in Mexico, my youngest son, like after I got back, he said, "Oh, it's so nice to just be home and just be able to come home and just relax." Because I had him going to a neighbor's house after school every day until my husband picked him up. So I know they enjoy that,
Such the
and
hard life of the
yeah,
9-year-old.
right.
I was working in the coal mines.
Yeah.
Just feels so nice to have a place I can relax and come home to.
So I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I kind of lost my train of thought.
Are your kids masters of the social media stuff?
No, but my youngest, he
What do you
wants
mean
me.
no? What do you mean? What
I
do you mean
mean,
by no?
well, they do. Like they love watching YouTube, and they have their favorite YouTubers they follow. And my oldest, he's more in a private chat room. He's not on social media per se, like Facebook and Instagram and stuff. But my youngest one he wants me to do more art tutorials with him, and where
Yeah.
it's just like us drawing together, but we haven't done it yet. And he likes to check my stats, and he gets really
You said that's the
excited when I
younger
get
one or the older one?
my younger one. He gets really excited when I get one new subscriber, or if I got another view or whatever.
You got to leverage that. I'm telling you, you have a marketing team right there. Put
I
them to
know.
work, you know.
I know. I need to.
I can deal with them. I'll do the dishes and I'll sweep as the chores. But what you guys are gonna have to do is take my videos, splice them, edit them, and make 3 videos a week and post them. Right?
I know, but that's
and
like
you don't get fed. What was that?
It's so much work doing those YouTube videos and just getting them edited, and I feel like I'm barely scraping by getting them produced, and sometimes it takes me several hours just to get a really short video.
Yeah,
put
don't
together.
do it. Have them do it. Seriously.
Yeah,
You got to think of yourself as a farmer. You got kids.
Yeah.
You put them to work. I'm serious. Like you that's what you're doing. When the internet first came around, that's exactly how I saw it. Like 20 years ago, I was like, oh my God, this is like the king farmer environment,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's why they call them domains, right? You go and you buy your land. This is your land, right?
Yeah.
And you brand it. The address to your land happens to be your name, right? So, but that's your farm. Now you can create it like a farm. You can create it like a kingdom, like whichever way or as big as you want it. But it's going to require a different attitude depending on how you do it. But the farmer has his land. It's his land, and he brings his family into that place, right? To develop their crop. Now, in this case, your crop is art, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to make signs. You got to take it to market. You got to, harvest it. There's all these little jobs that go into it.
Oh my gosh, there's so much. Yes.
And it is very normal and healthy to bring your family into it. Like, go study Amish people. It's fascinating. Like, they have their, they do their job, right? Like, they go build houses and things like that. But they get up like 4 hours before they go to work, and they do all these chores, which for most people would be a job, like a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have breakfast, and then they go to work, right? Yeah. And you're like, what? And you got 12-year-old boys out there, 10-year-old boys. Like, put them to work. They'll love it. They'll love it.
Well, we shall see. But yeah, I love the farming analogy, because before we moved back to where we live now, my husband farmed with his dad. And
oh, really? Well,
actually, one of the paintings I have where it says "Sunrise over the pasture."
Yes.
Original oil painting. That is the view out of my mother and father-in-law's front window, overlooking their farm, and it's just beautiful. It's like you're living inside of a postcard. And so we lived there for about 7 years, and it actually was a very heavily populated Amish community, so I can totally relate to everything you're saying about that. And oftentimes, like when I'm trying to explain some of my tactics and marketing things to my husband to help him to relate to why I'm doing what I'm doing, I usually use farming analogies, because he grew up as a farmer with farmers, and then we farmed for 7 years, and he totally gets it. And when I finally made the leap to investing some money in art storefronts, the way I explained it to Tim, or my husband, was, okay, imagine you have a field of corn to harvest and you're doing it all by hand. And then imagine what a difference it makes when you get a combine. Having art storefronts is like buying a combine. And then once I told him that, he was like on board with
that's beautiful,
making the investment to do it. And I wish I had done it sooner, but Yeah.
Well, let's talk about art storefront for a moment, because it's a fascinating tool.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you love about it? Like, what are your top 2 or 3 things that you just absolutely love about? I'll say it encompassing everything.
Well, I love them. Their customer service is
Mm-hmm.
excellent. And if I ever have a question, I can do, chat support. And then they also have this marketing playbook thing that it's like having a manager, a marketing manager,
Mm-hmm.
where they have a private Facebook group that they put this weekly marketing calendar on that just gives you things that, okay, on Monday, do this kind of post. On Tuesday, do this kind of post. On Wednesday, do a newsletter. And then you can click on that, and there's this whole marketing calendar, and then you can click on the date of whatever, assignment it is for that date. And then
Mm-hmm.
it gives you all the steps you need to do and links and information on how to do it. So it can be a little, it's kind of like, whoa, it's eye-opening on how much there is to learn and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But it's that's the thing that I struggled with the most with my marketing is like, oh, I don't know what to do today. What am I supposed to do today? And I waste half my time thinking about what I'm supposed to be doing, and then I end up getting nothing done.
Yep.
So this is kind of like I equated it to, well, 1, getting a combine, or 2, having an employee, like, or somebody who's in charge of marketing as far as like the management part of
Yeah.
it. So I really like that. That took a lot of pressure off, because I didn't have to be like, oh, what am I supposed to be doing all the time? And then another thing I like about it is they have it's this private Facebook group of like, there's over 2,000 artists on there, and we share information and we support each other. And there's people from art storefronts it's all about marketing. That's the focus. It's not the technical side of the website. It's just marketing. So it's really, really helpful. And it's like having a support group, like of people who actually get what you're trying to do. So
I agree with you 100%. This is going to turn into an ad for them. So anyone who's listening, get ready.
yeah.
You will want to go buy these guys. Now, what I love about this company is that every person that I ever talk to about the company, they never talk about the product. The product is incredible on itself.
It is.
But it is the people behind it, right?
Yeah.
And the commitment. They do a podcast. They're focused on marketing and educating the people who are buying into their product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's where you see the strength. It's just not like, hey, I built this really cool tool, and then you can just sign up and use it and forget it, right? And it's just not like videos that teach people stuff, but like there's human beings that get up day and night every single day to figure out ways to help you crush it, right? I mean,
yeah, because if we win, they win. They like it's a symbiotic relationship in a way. Like if we win and we sell things, then they win, and it keeps them going, and it keeps them. They're always on top of things, finding the newest features and different ways and tools to communicate with your audience. And then the other thing I really like about them too is, it does sound like a commercial, but I'm just being blatantly honest.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Like, I really like, okay, with my other web host, which maybe they'll change, I don't know, but like to offer one item and offer it in multiple sizes, like if I'm selling prints. I remember one day just wanting to pull my hair out, and it took me over 4 hours to offer one item that in like maybe 4 different sizes. And I had to go into PayPal and create the button myself that has all the drop down menus and everything. And then I would like try to save it, and then something glitched out and it lose all my work, and I'd have to try to recreate the button again for the the shopping cart button, and it was so frustrating. I can feel my blood pressure going up thinking about it.
And what's even worse with that is you go through all that work and all you did was create a button so you could get people's money. But once you got their money, then you had to go fulfill the order and find a place to print it and ship it. But with Art Storefront, and this is a commercial, they do all that for you, right? You click a button, boom, they tell you the sizes based on the artwork that you upload. It will say, okay, you can go up to this far to keep quality. They're all about quality. And then they have distribution centers throughout the United States. So depending on where you're located or where the sale comes, it goes to a printer in that region, right? A high-end art printer, and then they fulfill that out, right? So you build these relationships, like the system and the relationship, and that's the key here. You're using technology, but you never feel like you're dealing with robots. You're actually dealing with people with hearts, like who love and care about this business and you, and they put everything into it, and it's how an online business should be.
Well,
and there are a couple of them out there like that in terms of online business, but in terms of art, I've never seen anyone like
I know
these
I
guys.
haven't either, and I've been toying around with them, like trying to glean as much of the free information as they give me, as possible, as far as the marketing help and stuff, for like probably 3 years. And I just finally pulled the trigger right before Black Friday and just jumped in, and it's been so much work transferring everything over, but I'm finally getting to where I feel comfortable. But just when I was first uploading all my artwork on there, I was like, oh my gosh, I just uploaded like, I don't know, what was it, like 30 items or whatever for prints. And that would have taken me 120 hours based on my experience with that one example I gave you from before. And that's huge. It's like I have a whole staff behind me to support me. So so far, I'm really happy with it.
Yeah. Another company that I thought was like that was a place called Fresh Books. And Fresh Books back in the day was a invoicing system. And I used to use them when I did my freelancing work. And they were like that. And there's another company that is so much like Art Fronts. It's called ClickFunnels. Like when you deal with those guys, like those guys every day are getting up to make their tool, but not just their tool, but the people who use it win, And so when you can find these companies where you see the technology, the apps, the things that you're using, but like the owner of the company it's accessible, they're out there, their company is set up to make you win, to help you win. It just changes the game, and it's done. They do it right. So if anybody wants, go to Art Store. What is it? Art Store? Art Storefront.
Art Storefronts.
Art Storefront. So like a storefront.
Yeah, and if you decide to pull the trigger, mention my name, because then I can get a couple of free months of web hosting.
Oh, look at you.
Well, I need all the help I can get.
Actually, what let's do this. Send me the link for your affiliate.
Okay.
I'll put that in the show notes. So if you want, if you guys are interested, do click on Marie's link, so that then if you do sign up, she can benefit from having referred you. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for doing that. That would be wonderful if I could do that.
Very cool. So now we're to the most important question that I'm going to ask you in this entire conversation. What's something that you love to eat? Or make?
Well, okay, this is okay. I know in my notes that I gave you, I had put a couple of different things, and
Mm-hmm.
but like then last night as I was cooking, I had this epiphany of like what I like to do most,
Mm-hmm.
and I love to when we have lots of different leftovers in the fridge.
Okay.
I love to be able to create a gourmet meal out of like I love the challenge of saying, all right, what do we have? And then make something amazing out of that. And like last night I was pretty proud of myself. Like we had this doesn't sound very elegant like as I'm talking about leftovers, but I know everybody can relate. So we had one grilled bacon wrapped pork chop left from the night before, and we had some pasta, some
Mm-hmm.
gluten free pasta, and we had what else did I have? Some Kalamata olives and some
Mm.
goat cheese
Mm.
and just a small sprinkling of shredded Gouda cheese, Parmesan cheese. We had like 5 eggs left, and I knew we had some fresh green onions, but I didn't feel like cutting anything up. So,
Mm-hmm.
but in the fall, usually I have some chives in my garden out front, and in the fall, I just go into this harvest mode just because I think just with my floristry background in the falls when I would always be picking flowers, and I used to do lots of dried floral arrangements and stuff too before I really got into selling my paintings and things. So in the fall, that's when I'm in harvest mode, and I usually cut off all the chive leaves that I can get, and then I dice them up, lay them on a cookie sheet, freeze them, and then put them in a baggie so I can just use them to sprinkle on stuff. So I had some of
Mm-hmm.
those, and I poured some olive oil in the skillet, heated it up, and then put the leftover spaghetti in the skillet and kind of like crisped it on the bottom, and then
Mm-hmm.
I whipped up the eggs and put some milk and Parmesan cheese and some I don't know garlic and onion and like this lemon pepper seasoning. And then I was like, oh wait, we have goat cheese too. And so I ended up, it's like painting. It's like I made all these layers. So first I have the spaghetti, then I poured the egg mix, or no, then I had my husband slice really thin the bacon and pork chops. So I had a
Mm-hmm.
layer of that I was able to make that spread out over the whole skillet. And then we had some spinach. So I
Mm.
put a layer of that on, and then the goat cheese I sprinkled some of that on, and the eggs, I say the eggs, and then to top it all off I sliced up some Kalamata olives and sprinkled those over the top, and then sprinkled with the Gouda cheese and just let it cook, kind of like a frittata.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do say so myself, it was pretty damn good. And I always like when you're a stay-at-home mom, sometimes you have to make yourself, for me, I always try to put a dollar amount on what I would have to pay for that if it was in a restaurant for dinner, and it probably would have been a $20 meal. So I tell my husband, see, I just saved you all that money. But
Say this $100.
everybody loved it, and yeah, so that's one thing. I think I was just, as I was cooking that, I was like, I think that's what I love most about cooking is that challenge, and it's like putting a puzzle together, and it's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just another creative outlet for me, and the presentation of it and the colors and the patterns I can create within each dish that I make is really something I really love.
That's cool. That's cool. I relate to the eggs and spaghetti though. Uh, The other day I was making something, and I took a little spaghetti, um, but I was making oh, that's what it was. I was making bread, and so I wanted to put like this little egg wash on top of the rolls before putting them in the oven.
Hmm.
And so I took some eggs, I add a little bit of water to it, a couple spices, beat it up, put it on top of the bread, right? But I still had like a lot of this egg mixture left over. And so I was cooking some spaghetti, and I looked at it and I'm like, wait a second. And I took all the spaghetti and put it in the jar with the eggs in there. And
Hmm.
I like mixed it together and then put it back in the pan, and it cooked up. And it was this, oh, that's what it was. I was having clams with them. Not clams, mussels with them.
Hmm.
And so it was actually really, really nice. It was almost like a very oriental taste to it. Um, Having that egg noodle combination. And so eggs and spaghetti, yes.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do. Well, in response to what you just said too, the other cool thing is like each time you make a dish, unless if you write it down and measure exactly, it's like an original piece of artwork. It's really hard to recreate.
Yeah.
It's always slightly different every time you prepare it. And at least for me, like, I think, oh, I made the most amazing thing. And then I try to recreate it for a company when they come over, and it's never the
Yep.
same. And I'm like, it was so much better the last time I made it. Or if like you tried to, make it in a larger quantity, it's just
Yeah.
it's hard to get the proportions exactly right.
Well,
But
that's a tricky part. Like I used to be very much like, oh, I'm just, I measure things by, a pinch of this and just intuitively cook like that, right?
yeah.
Um, but over the last month, I've becoming very, very serious about making bread.
Hmm.
And because when I lived in Portugal, we'd have all this bread and we eat it all the time, but like nobody was fat, right? I
Yeah.
always say when I went to Portugal, I met 3 fat people and I was 2 of them.
Oh.
And and uh, and and you know, so what happened was I'm a single guy, so I was on this dating app, right? And I put a 50-mile radius to where I'm at. The problem is I'm right in the top part of Pennsylvania, and so it catches all these people in Canada, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I, being a creative and being very aware of observation, I'm like, why is it like 95% of all these attractive women happen to be in Canada? And and not that there weren't any in the States, but there was a difference. It was it was just a visual difference. Um and then I started thinking like, okay, well, I guess they're French influence. You had my experience in Portugal, and then I'm thinking in Europe, you don't really have fat people around, but they eat bread all the time, and we're told we shouldn't be eating bread, right? It didn't
Yeah.
make any sense. So I'm like, so I went to the store and I said, okay, I'm going to buy bread, but I'm not going to buy any bread that's, like normal bread. I'm going to buy the European breads and things
Yeah.
like that, right? The artisan breads. And so I
Yeah.
grab them, I look at them, and I'm like, I can't pronounce half the crap that's in it, right? So I just left it. I said, that's not the solution. And then I've been on this kick, what I call the classic man. I want to become a classic man, right? And so I was like, you know what? If I want bread, let me invest the time, the love, the into actually making my own. And so I'll get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, make my dough, let it sit so it's ready for me at 6 in the morning. I cut it up, let it rest, put it in the oven, have fresh bread before I go to work in the morning. Like it's this beautiful relationship that I'm having with this dough because I look at the dough as a living creature.
Well, it kind of
And
is with all
it,
the
with
yeast.
the yeast and stuff, yeah, it is. And you got to put it to bed, like it's kind of neat. But
Mhm.
but what I realized, I was listening to this doctor say, he said, well, because I thought, well, maybe it's the flour that we're using that's different. And he said, no, you use the same ingredients. The difference is that when you buy bread in the store, they have to inject it with all these preservatives to keep it staying on the shelf.
Yeah.
But when you're in a culture like in Portugal, right outside of my apartment, every morning the van would come with warm,
Yes.
fresh bread, right?
Yes.
So we,
Yeah.
yeah. So ultimately, what's happened now is I've come to a place like last night when I went to the museum for the critique. I brought fresh baked bread, and had some olive
Yeah.
oil and lemon, and some butter, and the people loved it. It was fun. But
Well, it's
yesterday
a
was the
community thing too. It's just like there's just all that interaction and yeah.
yeah. But yesterday was the first time where I finally felt like I built it intuitively enough that I was like, okay, I'm going to write this down. And so I wrote down both the amounts, like, okay, 2.5 cups of this, but then I also have a scale because I
Mm-hmm.
was watching a video. They said actually it's better to weigh your ingredients
Yeah.
because then it's actually precise. And so
Yeah.
I'm like weighing it all, and I had to write it down. So there are 2 recipes that I've written down that I make now, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this is why people write this stuff down, right?
Yeah, I know.
Like, so that there is that. So when you want that thing, you can go and actually make that thing. And
Well, yeah, and like usually I have great intention. I do actually write some of my stuff down, like especially if I knew my kids really like it. I want to make my own cookbook someday just for them, like a not a scrapbook, but a cookbook. So it's got
hmm
all the stuff they loved in
that's
it.
cool.
But I always like right after we eat it, if everybody says it's good, I usually state, okay, this is what I did. But half the time I forget to write it down, which is really bad. But it's a discipline thing, but
Yeah.
we do have some recipes written down, and like my son actually, we together kind of developed our own salsa recipe,
Mm,
and he's been raising money for, he's going to New York City this spring for his orchestra
nice.
group, and from that recipe he's raised almost half of the money that he needs for the trip. So we got it, we actually wrote down the recipe, and so we know how to make it in larger quantities and things. And I helped him make a Facebook group for the people from our neighborhood who want to buy salsa, and we just put out the APB, so to speak, for um salsa. And then we kind of made like a poll, and click here if you want 1 container, or here if you want 2 containers, and then you have a visual that shows who wants what, and then we deliver it or they come and pick it up. And so yeah, it's good if you actually write stuff down every now and then.
Yep. Yep. All right. Well, Miss Marie, how can people get in contact with you?
Well, first off, there's my website. That's where I
hmm
would go first. It's mariestevensart.com with a PH. I
Yes.
always have to, I used my maiden name, is a Dutch name, and it's Westerhoff. And I went from not one, or not 2 F's, 1 F, not 2 F's. Now it's PH, Stevens with a PH. So mariestevensart.com is the main place, or I'm also on Instagram, and it's just at Marie Stevens Art, and Facebook is also Marie Stevens Art.
And remember, in the show notes, I'm going to go ahead and put the art storefront link with Marie's affiliate code. So click on that so that you can go and see what they offer. And if you're interested and you do purchase, then she'll get a little kickback. because we're the art mob. Um,
We're very intimidating.
yes, with all our giggles and laughs. All right, well, it was a beautiful conversation. I thank you, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to do the interview, and it's been fun. And also, just on a back to your bread making, I like to hear more about that, and just your referring back to talking about Portugal and the bread mobile coming around. I can totally relate to that. Like going to Malta, and there was one summer I spent when I was 15. I went to Malta because that's where my
Your mom's from, yeah.
They have the bread the bread mobile, and the
Americans have the bread butt. They have the bread bus.
yeah. Yeah. So they have a baker on every corner, and they have this really delicious Maltese bread, and it's got the really hard crust around the outside, but it's really spongy on the inside, and so good. So just hearing you talk about that, I could taste it.
That's awesome. Awesome.
So, anyway, well, thank you for doing this, and maybe we can talk again in a few years, and maybe who knows where I'll be.
Beautiful. We will.
In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlying structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.